Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to talk about all the books that I read in the month of February for 2023. In February, I read a total of 8 books. I wanted to read 10, wish I had, but I didn't. So I had 2 5-star reads, 1 4-star read, 2 3-stars, and unfortunately I had 3 2-star reads. So I mean, having 2 5-stars in 1 month is pretty rare, but the fact that I also had 3 2-stars is not great. So the first book that I finished in February was Final Girls by Riley Sager. Now I gave this book 3 stars. Now, why did I give it 3 stars? Honestly, okay, so I didn't really enjoy hearing about this story through the narrator's point of view. So Quincy survived this deadly mass killing. She went to a cabin with her friends and she became the 3rd final girl. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you may be familiar with the term final girls. It's, you know, like when you watch a horror movie and there's always that one girl remaining after all her friends have been killed. And for some reason, she's the one that survived. She's the smartest. She's also like the shy one, the modest one, the good girl. This, I guess, I felt like this book was kind of making fun of that trope in some sort of way, but also trying to take itself very seriously. Quincy was the 3rd final girl, and we follow her, like, it's a split timeline between when she was at the cabin and later on her life when she's just trying to piece her life back together. She's kind of formed this new version of herself and is finally seeming normal again to other people. But in reality, Quincy's actually still struggling with what she went through. She's hiding it from her fiance. She's hiding it from her mom. Her and her mom don't really talk anymore. The only person she's still really close to is the cop that saved her life that night. I didn't really enjoy Quincy's character. I kind of found her aggravating, and usually I like an unreliable narrator, but for Quincy it just wasn't working for me. And then they not too far into the book, she meets up with the 2nd final girl. I think her name was Sam? I don't know. Anyway, she meets up with another final girl who is basically the opposite of what Quincy is doing. She, instead of trying to hide how much she's struggling, she's kind of used it to make like a hard outer shell, and her life has kind of gone to crap basically because of what happened to her. And so they form a tense friendship, I guess a equally toxic friendship is what happens, and we're following these two. And I didn't know where the story was going half the time. There was a mystery, but it wasn't that compelling. And the split timeline, like going back in time to see what happened at the cottage, I was expecting myself to be really excited and anticipating like those flashbacks to see what happened, but I really just didn't care. Like, I didn't even like her friends in the flashbacks. I didn't like Sam. I didn't like the main character, and I really think that was the issue. If I didn't have any character to root for, then I wasn't interested in the book. So there's that. Final Girls, 3 stars. I don't know if I recommend it. I know I gave it 3 stars. It means I didn't regret reading it, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I still may try another Riley Sager book just to see if I'll like any of his other work. The second book that I read, oh, not this one. The second book that I read in February was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So actually right now I'm on the 2nd book, and I'm on the 2nd book so quickly because I really love this one. Originally I rated it 5 stars, but after sitting on it for a bit, I decided to lower it down to 4, not because of anything the book did. I thought it was really great. I really enjoyed reading it. The pacing was great. It was good for what it was, a YA mystery thriller that I had a fun time reading. But it wasn't that much more than that. Like, it didn't do anything beyond that. So I guess that's why I rated it a 4. Like, I couldn't put it on the same tier as the other 5 stars that I read. So, but I still highly recommend it. I really enjoyed reading from Pip's point of view. I really liked her character. I found her character reminiscent of Stevie from Truly Devious, but I think I actually liked Pip more because Pip was a bit more, like, I could tell she had a bit of a dark side. Like, it says A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but is Pip really a good girl though? Is kind of the question. Like, she's very dedicated and kind of obsessive when it comes to solving her mysteries. And a bit, like, I felt like the fact that she was turning it into, like, felt a bit selfish for me for how she was treating people's lives, I guess. It was like she was trying to make something of herself for it rather than doing it for the good of other people. But I really enjoyed like following her along as she like put the pieces together, did her interviews, found evidence. Highly recommend this one. 4 stars. The next book I read in the month of February, I actually don't have. I borrowed it from the library and I listened to it on audio. It was Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Now, I've read a lot of books when I was a preteen and a teenager, and I'm surprised I didn't really get to the Shadowhunter books. I don't remember if I tried to read A City of Bones at one point, but I never got to it. So basically I wanted to give it a try because I realized that besides some of the books I already have on my shelves, the Shadowhunters books is something that I see a lot of other readers like still enjoy as an adult. So I figured, oh, it must be good, you know, it must still hold up till now. I tried to read it a few years ago and I DNF'd it, but I wanted to give it another shot. I ended up rating it 3 stars. For me, unfortunately, in one book, I didn't feel that attached to the characters, even the main character, Tessa Gray, and I didn't like either of her love interests. Like, honestly, if a book is half fantasy, half romance, and the romance I feel for this book was equal to the fantasy elements or even a little bit higher than the fantasy elements, and that's something I don't like in my fantasy romances. I prefer books that are more fantasy than romance. Like the romance has to play a smaller role in the story, and the main plot line has, like, the characters have to see that as the main thing to focus on. And if I feel like the characters are focusing like like an irrational amount of their focus is going to the romance in their lives, then I kind of like, it irritates me. It's like one of those pet peeves that I have. So that's part of the reason why I didn't rate it that highly. Another reason, so 1, I wasn't attached to the characters. 2, the romance fantasy balance was off. And 3, like, for me, the ending kind of fell flat. Like, I didn't really, I don't know if it was the audiobook. I don't want to blame it on the audiobook. I just it didn't feel that epic to me. Like, I felt like I was supposed to feel more from it, but I didn't. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. I don't regret reading it because I really did want to give Cassandra Clare's works a shot, but I wouldn't recommend it, and I don't think I'll be continuing on with the series. The next book that I read was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Lynn. So for this book, I rated it 2 stars. Ugh, I forgot that I rated it so lowly. Honestly, I don't feel like it deserves this rating. Honestly, I gave it 2 stars purely for my enjoyment, like how much I enjoyed the book, and it wasn't that much, to be quite honest. I listened to it on audio, and the narrator did such a good job of like reading the descriptions. Like, I felt like this book was very flowery, very fantastical, very beautiful in its descriptions of this magical Asian inspired world. I felt like I felt like if I were watching this book, it would be like a colorful painting. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys, but I felt like I was watching the characters. Does anybody else read books and feel like a movie's playing in their head? Well, I was reading this one and like there was an anime going on in my head, and it was a very colorful, like water painted, vibrant. I felt like the writing style was really good. Like, even though it was flowery, usually I hate flowery books, but for this one I felt like it was very beautiful. But I'm not really a whimsy reader. Like, I don't like books that are too whimsical, too soft in its magic system, and I felt that is the definition of this book. It is very whimsical, very beautiful, soft magic system, heavy on the romance. Like I mentioned earlier, if it's a fantasy romance, I like the fantasy to play a bigger part. And I felt like this book had such high stakes, but the character kept focusing on the romance. Like, it's like your life is on the line, your loved ones are on the line, and you're worried about which boy you're gonna kiss. You know, I don't know. But yeah, so that is why I rated this book 2 stars. But unlike the other books, I do recommend it. If this sounds like a book like you'd enjoy, one where you love the romance aspects, you love beautiful writing, you love whimsical, soft magic systems, Asian inspired, then you should definitely read this one. It actually really reminded me of like a mix between Spin the Dawn, I think was the Mulan retelling. Yeah, Spin the Dawn mixed with the Poppy War is kind of the vibe it was giving me, without all the super dark themes of the Poppy War. It just, as far as like the magic system, how it went, and the spirit of the main character really reminded me of the Poppy War. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I definitely recommend it for you. Oh, so after Daughter of the Moon Goddess, I finished my first 5-star of the month, Blood Sugar by Sascha Rothchild. I love this book. Like, I read it physically, duh, because I have the book right here. And I really enjoyed reading from this main character. Like, I felt like she was such a real, fully fleshed out narrator, a main character. The plot was good, the pacing was great. I love the themes that Sascha Rothchild just talked about in here. Like, there was discussions about mental health, there was discussions about drugs and addiction. Like, being in this character's head is very thought-provoking. Like, she really gets you to think about like motivations, like why do people do the things they do, why do people present themselves in a certain way. The main character in here is actually a therapist. Oh, did I even mention what it's about? Okay, so Ruby Simon, it's basically going back and forth between the present timeline where she's being accused of 4 murders, but she says she only committed 3. She's actually being accused of killing her husband and 3 other people, and she says she didn't kill her husband, but she did kill the other 3. And it's basically, honestly, I feel like this, you'd think this was a thriller, but I feel like it's more heavily focused on the character, like the character development, the character study. Like, it's basically like an introspective look into the mind of a murderer, if the murderer was a regular person, like a person you knew, a person who you grew up with. Because I feel like Ruby, like, despite being a killer, she was very relatable. One day I'm gonna reread this book and just like, I'm actually gonna annotate it, because I know this is a book I'm definitely going to keep. And there's so many good lines in here, so many like thought-provoking questions and comments that the author made. I really enjoy, especially like I mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed how she was discussing like what motivates people to do right and wrong. Like, why do people feel like murder is such a horrible thing when they can do all these other horrible things in their life? Like, what makes this main character different from everybody else? So yeah, I really enjoyed this one and I highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars for a reason. Okay, after Blood Sugar, I read Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, my other 5-star read of the month. Does it really come as a surprise? Like, I love a lot of Brandon Sanderson's books, and I'm surprised it took me so long to get to this one. I guess because it was YA, I was kind of worried it wouldn't be as deep and as exciting as Brandon Sanderson's other books, but I was totally wrong. I felt like it had the same tone, the same heart as all of his other books. Like, even his main series, it's just told through the point of view of a teenager. At first, it's like you have a love-hate relationship with this main character. Like, she can really aggravate you and annoy you, but at the same time, you totally get where she's coming from and you're rooting for her at the same time. So Spencer is the daughter of a coward. She lives in the society that is underground because they are under attack by an alien race that comes from the sky. And she wants to be a pilot so that she can defend the people of her planet, who are basically the only humans left, and they're defending themselves against aliens. Now, Spencer has a chip on her shoulder because when she was much younger, her father infamously betrayed his flight and ran away and was shot down for it. So she is trying to become good enough to get into flight school so that she can make a name for herself other than the daughter of a coward. And I really felt for her. Like, I wanted to see her succeed. I was enjoying all the aspects of flight school. Like, I would have thought that it would have been boring, like day in and day out, just following somebody go to school, but flight school sounded so interesting the way that Brandon Sanderson wrote it. Like, he skipped through the parts that were repetitive, but there was enough like different lessons that she was learning throughout flight school that it kept it interesting. And also the stakes are so high in here. I mean, anybody could die at any moment, because even though they're in flight school, they're already in combat. So I guess I really loved seeing how Spencer evolved as the book went as the book went on, seeing her relationships with other people grow, seeing how she evolved on her own despite having such a huge chip on her shoulder. Like, she changed for the better, I feel, and I loved watching that change. So I actually just got Starsight in the mail yesterday, and I'm going to start that today for sure. All right, so 2 more books left. The next book I read, the 7th book of February, was The Collective by Alison Gaylin. Now, I actually don't have that because I listened to it on audio. The Collective had a really interesting premise. It's basically this woman feels wronged because her child was killed by somebody and they weren't punished. Like, either the person was like found not guilty, and it basically ruins her life. Like, she can't live with the fact that her child was wronged, was murdered, and the person got away with it. So she ends up joining basically this secret society called The Collective of a whole bunch of other moms who want revenge for their dead children. She joins the society not knowing what she's getting herself into. I mean, you can probably imagine, right? So I was really excited. I think I really enjoyed like maybe the first half of this book, and then it kind of went downhill from there. Like, it was pretty, I mean, honestly, it's pretty forgettable. Like, I didn't read this book that long ago, and I already forgot a lot of the details because the events, like, halfway through the book, I stopped relating to the main character. I couldn't understand the motivations of the society. I was getting frustrated by our main character's decisions, and I didn't know, like, I couldn't get behind the mission of this society, basically. Like, I didn't have those same emotions. Like, they were describing the character's emotions, her deep anger, her deep sadness, but I didn't feel it the way that I thought that I should. And I felt like the book should spend more time with that rather than on the plot, you know? If it was more of like a character focus rather than plot focus, maybe I would have enjoyed it better. But yeah, it's a bit of a forgettable thriller. Not something I really recommend. And finally, the last book that I barely finished at the end of February was Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon. I read Iceland Barbarian, I think it was either December or January, I kind of forget. I really enjoyed that book. I mean, I'm not much of a romance or like a smutty romance reader, to be quite honest. I don't find it interesting. I guess the steamy scenes kind of make me cringe. So it usually makes me cringe. And I think that usually happens with contemporary romances. Actually, wait, no. Even what do you call it? A Court of Thorns and Roses made me cringe a lot, that series. But for some reason, I guess I was more, the plot of Iceland Barbarians kept me interested. Like, the fact that all of these young women were kidnapped by aliens and crash landed on this ice planet where there's a bunch of huge blue aliens who are super handsome and rescue them, and they have to learn to survive on this planet is basically the gist of it. I feel like there was a pretty good balance. Like, there is a lot of steam in this book. This is very much not suitable for young minds. I felt like it was a really good balance, and I mean, for the steamy scenes, I was actually laughing. Like, I feel like this is like a sci-fi fantasy romantic comedy, to be quite honest. Like, there was funny scenes in this. I like the main, oh wait, I'm talking about the first book. I like the first book, but Barbarian Alien, like, I got to the second book because I liked the first book enough that I wanted to see what happened to the other characters. Because the first book, each of the books in the series follows a different woman that crash landed on this planet and their love stories. And I really love the love story of the first character. I thought her love interest was a great love interest. Like, he was such a cinnamon roll, but also a really big protector and everything. And he was a gentleman. The freaking love interest in the second book was a giant a-hole, basically. And I hated him. I hated her. I hated both of them, and I hated them together. I just wanted to get through this book because I wanted to like get my 8 books done in this month. But if it hadn't been for that, I would not have finished this book. It was horrible, and because of it, I don't think I'm going to read the rest of the series. I will just enjoy the first book for what it is and just pretend it's a standalone and just forget about all the other women. And yep, that's the book that I rated 2 stars. Honestly, I probably should have given it 1. But yeah, that's about it, guys. Those are all the books that I read in the month of February. Thank goodness, because the sun is really going down now. We're losing the light, and I want to get some reading done. But yeah, that's all the books I read in February. Hopefully I can read more in March and read better books in March. Wish me luck with that. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye.